first, we have to get to Pete Prisco's power rankings because we have a new batch of power rankings that just dropped. And just a reminder, you can find these on CBSSports.com right now. There is a new #1. The Niners moving up 3 spots after beating up on the Eagles. The Eagles, you see them there at #2. Cowboys at #3. The Packers, they're also on the move, up 6 spots after beating Kansas City. KC falling out of the top 5. But getting back to the Niners, they are very, very good. We also have Brady Quinn here with us to kind of hold Pete accountable. When they're healthy, BQ, they are very good. #1 in the power rankings. They weren't there last week, and we had a discussion about it, why the Cowboys were ahead of them. We have the receipts, so take a listen.
Hard to put a team ahead of them when you lose 3 in a row a month ago.
They have
a month ago.
How many is San Francisco?
But they were hurt. They were injured. I get it. They were hurt. They had guys out of the lineup. But when Dallas has guys out of the lineup, it doesn't matter.
How many has San Francisco won in a row now?
2.
Okay. They're back on a win streak, aren't they?
Yeah.
God, dude, I don't know why Jack brings me in here to do this. You can't make sense of it.
That's the whole idea of it.
There's no rational thought at all.
It makes our week when you get worked up. Let's put it that.
All right, Fresh Takes presented by Fresh Pet. It is not pet food, it is food. Fresh Takes, that's what we like. And we have Pete Prisco here with us, Brady Quinn.
Well, here's a fresh take. We didn't have this as part of it, but one of the things I challenged Pete with was the fact that San Francisco beat the Dallas Cowboys head-to-head. And that was probably the biggest issue that I had with Pete's rankings, but he kept saying, well, they lost 3 in a row. Well, they were injured, and now we've seen for 3 games in a row what they look like when they're back healthy, Pete. Apparently now they've convinced you they could be #1 in your power rankings.
They finally convinced me. Yes, they did. And by the way, I did pick them to win it all. I picked them to go to the Super Bowl, so it's not like I don't think they're a good team. The fact of the matter is they just dominated the Eagles. And the Cowboys didn't look very good last week. Let's be honest about it. They didn't look great on defense. Seattle went up and down the field on them, and the San Francisco 49ers look like the best team in the league. So with that, you move up to #1. They weren't #1 last week. They're #1 this week, Brady. You can't complain about it anymore.
I'm not complaining about it anymore, Pete. I'm glad you finally did the right thing by placing them ahead of the Cowboys, since they already beat them head-to-head this year, which never made sense when you had them behind them.
Long time ago.
Well, it wasn't that long ago. But your point is valid. Look, when Brock Purdy's able to distribute the football the way he did versus Philly, it really shows you what this team is capable of, and that's being really on a tier of themselves. In Pete Prisco's rankings, they're at #1. There's a bigger gap than I think anyone else realizes between them and everyone else when they're at their best. Now, Philly was coming off a long string of games where you felt like, against another great opponent like San Francisco, you could sense maybe a blowout could happen. Doesn't help, too, when Jalen Hurts gets knocked out of the game. Eventually came back, but still, that was almost building up. And it doesn't get any easier for them. They have to play the Cowboys this week. So it's been a gauntlet and a brutal schedule for Philly. But give the San Francisco 49ers a lot of credit. This team, when healthy, is the best team in the NFL. And Pete's trying to say he's picked them to win the Super Bowl. I think he picked them to be in there. I thought he picked the Jacksonville Jaguars to win it when all was all said and done.
I think he did pick the Niners over the Jags, right, Pete?
Yes, I did, and I still liked my pick up until last night.
And we have an update on Trevor Lawrence, a high ankle sprain. That is what Doug Peterson said. We'll get to that in just a moment. Yeah, the Niners, they are good when they're healthy. 16-0 when Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and Deebo Samuel are all healthy. Let's talk about the Chiefs. They have fallen out of the top 5. They're now at #6. It's not the offense that we are used to seeing for the Chiefs in past seasons. Do you think this defense can kind of carry this team as we're looking ahead? They get the Bills on Sunday. That's certainly not an easy task, Brady.
It's a big if, and in part because the AFC is loaded with so many good quarterbacks. And I think even just to make your way through the AFC playoffs and get back to another AFC championship game, it feels like it's going to be tough sledding for this team, especially if they're not the #1 overall seed where they have to play one less game. They get that bye. They get home field advantage throughout. So as it currently stands, being in the #3 spot, yeah, the odds are stacked against them. This is what's transpired over the course of this season. All the hits that the Chiefs have been able to make in their front office and their coaching staff with their draft picks on defense, they've worked out. This defense has really been the most stable, consistent piece of the Chiefs team. However, those picks on offense, they've been overshadowed by the fact that the picks have worked out on defense. And they didn't sign Tyreek Hill to the long-term extension. Instead, they trade him off. they have never replaced that dynamic ability. And I think they've really relied on Patrick Mahomes for being able to raise the level of everyone else out around him. Well, that's good enough when you've got Travis Kelce, but it's not good enough ultimately to win a Super Bowl, I think, with just Travis Kelce. Now, you can make the case that it was last year for this team, but they also had some other pieces pitch in. This year, that hasn't been the case. They need someone to emerge like yesterday at the wide receiver spot to give them more productivity and take some pressure off. And here's an idea for you, Pete. Zach Ertz is right now a free agent. I think this team would be better off signing Ertz at the tight end spot to go opposite of Kelce, playing more base personnel sets, which means you get a little more favorable matchups, hopefully on both Kelce and Ertz, and it doesn't make you put an extra wide receiver on the field that isn't really doing much for you anyway. And it might help out the running game a little bit with Isaiah Pacheco. And I know you hate hearing that, but that's the reality of where this team is at right now, because you're not going to find another difference maker at wide receiver at this point in the season.
No, I don't mind that. That's actually a good idea. I mean, look, they're not getting any production from those wide receivers, and they've used a lot of draft capital on those wide receivers. A guy like Sky Moore, what does he do? He doesn't do anything. And by the way, Kelce didn't do much the other night either. I mean, that was one of those games in prime time where he disappeared at times. So I'm with you, Brady. I think the defense has been really, really good. The offense is just not the same. It's just not as explosive as it's been. The timing isn't great. Just when you think Rashee Rice is going to get going, he kind of disappears a little bit. I just think when you look at the overall picture, they just don't look like the Kansas City Chiefs offense. And by the way, the two tackles aren't great either. They spent a lot of money on the right tackle, Jawan Taylor, and the left tackle, Donovan Smith, hasn't been very good either. They have problems on their offensive line.
Chiefs and the Bills, you can watch that on CBS at 4:25 Eastern on Sunday. Let's talk about the Jags. They're at number 8 in your power rankings, Pete. Doug Peterson just saying in a press conference that for Trevor Lawrence, that is a right high ankle sprain. We're still not sure how long he's going to be out for. Regardless of Trevor Lawrence and that performance against the Bengals, the defense was not good. Brady, is that the issue, the Jags defense, or is Jake Browning just having a moment?
I mean, look, this has been the year of the backup. I think Jake Browning played great in that spot. And, you see what this offense is capable of for the Bengals versus any defense when you get Jamar Chase going and T. Higgins as part of that lineup. I think the concerns, though, with the Jacksonville Jaguars are legitimate in the sense of I don't think this defense can carry this team through the rest of their season. And I don't know that they'll be able to get that #1 overall seed, which would be incredibly important, whether it's for the health of Trevor Lawrence, whether he comes back or not, or needs that tightrope surgery that everyone seems to get when they have a high ankle sprain. But he has come back from these sorts of issues before. We've seen him kind of get rolled up on. The question is, with the remaining schedule, can C.J. Beathard really allow this team to get through the next few weeks, if you will? The very last 3 games, I think they're all winnable, even without Trevor Lawrence. The next 2, Cleveland, Baltimore, that's going to be a struggle. So I think the overall concerning thing is they could now take a huge hit in the context not only just of the #1 overall seed in the AFC playoff picture, but also their division, as Houston got to win this weekend, and C.J. Stroud and that group are on their heels, Pete.
Yeah, they really are. And Brady, you mentioned a lot of good points there. I'm curious to think, you played the quarterback position, high ankle sprain. How long do you think he'll be out?
It depends. I mean, it's tough now. You see guys, depending on if they have the tightrope surgery, maybe you could come back in 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, the last guy I remember doing that was Tua Tagovailoa back when he was in college, and he still didn't look 100% out there in the field when he did do it. It also depends on which leg is it. He's a right-handed quarterback. If it's his right ankle, it's going to be different than his left ankle. Very similar to how we talk about Aaron Rodgers, Achilles, and how it impacts the throwing motion, the transfer of weight, all those things. So, look, we've seen him again get rolled up on when it's looked pretty bad in games, and he's been able to overcome that. Nowadays, I think they're better than ever at getting guys to be able to come back to play. So I don't know. Only Trevor Lawrence and the medical staff knows the severity of the injury. Either way, though, it still doesn't bode well for them to try to get that #1 overall spot, which I think you and I both agree they have to get if they have any shot of getting through the AFC playoff picture.
Well, the other thing about the defense, and a couple things. Look, their draft picks are high draft picks. Are Trayvon Walker, Devin Lloyd, Tyson Campbell, second-round pick. You look at those guys, and last night, all 3 of them were non-existent. I mean, Trayvon Walker can't rush the passer. He's okay. He's a decent football player. He's just not a great pass rusher. Devin Lloyd was lost the entire game, looked a step slow. Tyson Campbell got abused. The defense isn't very good. It hasn't been great all year. They've kind of, done it with takeaways and pass rush. And the other thing is, on the offensive line, the center. You know, Fortner is terrible, and he's a high draft pick as well. These guys can't run the ball because he plays too high and doesn't get any push. The right guard, Sheriff, hasn't played very well either. So add it all up, can't run the ball, can't stop people on defense. Even if Trevor Lawrence is in there, I think they have major problems.
And of course, we'll keep you posted on Trevor Lawrence with, you know, how long he's going to be out with that high ankle sprain. But like you said, Brady, the AFC South starting to open up, especially with that Jags loss there. And the Colts, if the season ends right now, they are in the playoffs. And Pete, in your article for your power rankings, you said, hey, credit to Shane Steichen. But do you want to give any credit to Gardner Minshew or not yet?
Well, he made a good play in overtime. I got to give him that. I mean, look, he made a couple good plays. He was okay on Sunday, and but I think this team is more than just, you know, the backup quarterback coming in playing well. I think when you look at that defense, Gus Bradley has a lot of young guys on that defense, and they played very well. So, yeah, I'll give Gardner Minshew some credit. And all of a sudden, their game this week doesn't look as easy as we thought it might look at Cincinnati. So I think when you look at this team, I think, yes, credit to Gardner Minshew, but real credit to Shane Steichen. I think he's done a really good job.
No, you're right. He has done a tremendous job, as has the rest of that coaching staff and the players on that team, Pete. But be honest, is there a wall? I mean, are the Colts ever going to be able to break in the top 10 with Gardner Minshew leading them right now?
Yeah, if they win the division, they're going to be in the top 10. Keep going. I mean, they're on a heck of a roll. I mean, look, seriously, I did not see this coming with Gardner Minshew playing quarterback, not just because of him, but because of the roster. When you look at the roster, there's a ton of young players. They start rookie corners. I mean, this is a young team, and I think they're getting better and better by the week.
Yeah, as is Gardner Minshew, over 300 yards passing, a couple touchdowns, too. So if Pete doesn't want to give him credit, I will gladly give him credit, as I've been trying to say. At some point, all right, at some point, Pete, you got to be a part of the mustache mania, all right?
He's done a nice job.
Yeah.
But you know what? Guys like him, it always looks good one week, and then it goes rotten the next.
They've looked pretty darn good for the last 4 weeks.
Hey, Pete's saying he's done a pretty good job. That's forward progress, Brady, for Gardner Minshew. Let's talk about the very bottom of the rankings in your power rankings. It is the battle for the worst teams. Right now at 31, you have the Patriots, and then at 32, the Panthers, who still only have one win this season. Brady, do you agree with that order, or would you flip-flop it?
I'd flip-flop it. I mean, Pete, I don't care what the record says. The Patriots are venturing into, like, territory we haven't seen maybe since you were born, back in the 1930s, when we saw a team be able to lose 3 straight games while holding their opponents to 10 points or less. That's where the Patriots are at this point. Yeah, the 1938 Chicago Cardinals, Pete, that's where we're at. You can't put them at the bottom of your rankings just because Carolina only has 1 win?
You know, back in the day when I was covering that Cardinals team, I knew they were really limited on offense, but I didn't know they were that bad. This Patriots offense is terrible, by the way. It is so bad. It doesn't matter who plays quarterback. They have no playmakers. The offensive line isn't great. They can't run the ball. And aside from that, they flip the ball at whatever quarterback they want to and say, go make plays. It's terrible, and Bill Belichick should be ashamed of the roster he's built in New England, which is why Bill Belichick, the general manager, should be fired tomorrow.
All right, Pete, you've been saying that for a couple of weeks now, that he should be fired at the manager position. Pete Prisco, Brady Quinn, breaking down Pete Prisco's latest power rankings. And again, you can find those over on CBSSports.com. A Week 14 early look ahead right now on the Pick 6 podcast in your feed. The crew's giving you picks, predictions, betting advice for the week ahead. Make sure you download and listen wherever you get your pods, or you can download or scan that QR code.